He dominated television for 20 years as the quintessential Western hero. However, James Arness was viewed differently by one woman. She observed his tardiness to set, his reckless behavior, and his jokes while others worked. She openly humiliated him in front of the entire cast in 1958, which caused their relationship to blow up. Everyone thought the 6'7" celebrity would be violent. His answer made all the difference. It was unexpected what the true cause of her hatred was. Hollywood was shocked by what followed. James Arness was born on May 26, 1923, in a little Minneapolis neighborhood. He nearly died of spinal meningitis at the age of 18 months. His odds, according to doctors, were fewer than 40%. However, James was given an experimental treatment by his father, Rolf, who marketed medical equipment and exploited his contacts at the hospital. He was left with a little limp, but it saved his life. The fact that this young boy would become Marshall Dillon was not anticipated at the time. Their residence was located at 3112 Humboldt Avenue. There were many German and Norwegian customs in the house. Old songs and prayers in both languages were taught to him by his mother, Ruth. James was 5 feet 8 inches tall at the age of 10. He inherited his height from his grandpa, a 6 foot 9 inch veteran of the Norwegian Royal Guard. However, James lacked confidence. As his mother once noted in her journal, James suffers from extreme shyness. "I don't think he'll ever work with people." James struggled greatly in school. Even his 1942 yearbook listed him as having the lowest chance of succeeding in communication. He submitted the same Treasure Island book report 3 years in a row, according to one teacher. He once felt ashamed in class and refused to speak for a whole semester in elementary school. Other than art, where he sketched horses and cowboys, and gym, he failed every subject. At one point, he chose to spend 31 days of a month exploring the river valley with his dog, Rex. But his IQ was 127, according to assessments. Clever. Simply lack of interest. Later, a psychologist wrote that James has an odd talent. At any moment when he felt uneasy, he could mentally get away. His long days of producing television would benefit greatly from that habit. He was quite close to his younger brother, Peter, who would go on to become well known as Peter Graves. When their father lost his business and began drinking in 1933, James, then 10, and Peter, then 7, forged a blood covenant in order to keep each other safe. At the age of 13, James shattered his wrist when he confronted their aggressive father. Peter never forgot that time. "That night, Jimmy became my real father," he once stated. At school, the two brothers were diametrically opposed. Although James suffered and Peter flourished, they remained inseparable. Native children taught them Ojibwe hunting tactics, and they constructed forts in the woods and explored the waters over the course of whole weekends. One neighbor recalled them as the talkative shadow of the quiet giant. James wasn't even considering acting. Indeed, he detested it. In order to avoid speaking on stage during a school play, he purposefully forgot all of his lines. A career as a sailor was his desire. At 16, he had read 2 years before the Mass 7 times, motivated by his grandfather's tales and the novel. At precisely 6:15 in the morning, he checked a barometer and transformed his room into a sailor's quarters. At the age of 16, he attempted to board a ship using fictitious documents and hitched a ride more than 160 miles to Duluth. He was apprehended after working as a deckhand for 3 days. He wrote in his journal, "Every lake here feels like a prison. An ocean is what I need." He wrote in his yearbook that he should never be confined to one role or location. In excess of a year. He would play a single role for 20 years. At 6 feet 7 inches, James was too tall to fly by 1943. 6 feet 2 inches was the limit for the Navy. It broke his heart. He was constantly concerned that his poor vision would make him ineligible. He didn't think his height would be the issue. His biggest asset in Hollywood would turn out to be his height, which was originally a curse. A semester of college was his first attempt, but then it was the draft. He enlisted in the Army and trained in Georgia when he was 19. He claimed to be mean and slender and claimed to be able to hike 20 miles with ease. After being transported to North Africa, he was sent to Italy. He enlisted there in the 3rd Infantry Division, one of the war's most formidable formations. James was on a boat sailing to Anzio on January 22, 1944. His sergeant said, "You're going first," and handed him 2 bundles of TNT. "We'll be able to tell it's too deep if you drown." James left the ramp and into the ocean. He was waist deep in water. The silence would not last, but he managed to reach beach with explosives. Anzio quickly became one of the bloodiest wartime campaigns. 10 days later, leading a patrol between enemy lines on a gloomy night was James. Silently, he walked 40 feet ahead of his group. He heard German voices abruptly. Then a machine gun started shooting. His right leg was shot into. The air was filled with gunshots as he leaped behind a line of grapevines. A grenade exploded close to him. Nearly unconscious, he was flung into the earth. He was discovered by his team with a dead soldier beside him. A medic gave him morphine in his stomach and applied sulfur powder to his wounds. $1 million wound was the designation given to the injury. Doctors discovered a serious infection in his leg, which was severe enough to send him home to the United States. They were on the verge of amputating. In January 1945, James was ultimately released from the hospital following multiple surgery. In addition to several war decorations, he had received the Bronze Star and Purple Heart. During his visit, his brother Peter suggested that he try radio. Since his voice was deep, James was not amused. It was a good concept. He emailed WLOL in Minneapolis an audition tape after being released. Without ever seeing his face, the station manager recruited him after recording him using army gear. He was paid $40 a week to read the farm report in the morning. The only issue was this: James knew little about agriculture. 17 times in a single broadcast, he mispronounced the word agriculture. They released him 3 months later. But that was sufficient. That initial experience of standing in front of a microphone ignited something. Andy Anderson, a friend from James's youth, and James were sitting in a Minneapolis bar in September 1946. Together, they had $27.83, but they intended to become performers by hitchhiking 1,900 miles to Hollywood. James, still hobbling from his injury, slept on hay during the 19-day journey, which included 14 rides. Their diet consisted primarily of canned beans and cheese sandwiches. Upon arriving in Los Angeles, they discovered a budget hotel on Sunset Boulevard. $8 a week. They were not desired. James was even told he was too tall and too unattractive by one casting director. They then unexpectedly entered a movie set while posing as electricians. James was not dismissed. He was given a stand-in position instead because of his height of 6 feet 7 inches. For John Wayne, it made $35. It was his first break and his first Hollywood check, but he never revealed his face on camera. By January 1947, James realized he required actual instruction. It didn't work out when he went to the Bliss Hayden Theater School to study using his GI Bill. During a scene from Our Town, he mispronounced 23 of his 27 lines. While the majority of the crowd flinched, one person did not. "You're awful, but you have a genuine quality," observed Leon Lance, a talent agent. Under one stipulation, Lance consented to act as his representative. 6 days a week of training were required of James prior to any auditions. Lance even covered the cost of 42 more coaching hours. In one practice, James was required to recite Shakespeare while carrying buckets of water. It succeeded. A little more than 3 months later, he was summoned to MGM for a screening. Then the name was changed. James got a little part in The Farmer's Daughter in April 1947. The check made out to James Arness was his first payday. The teller refused to cash it at the bank because she mistook it for Orweez. James didn't have any money. He was carrying $1.28. A woman heard his voice when he was arguing with the bank. She was Dorothy Harper, a casting director. That evening, she advised him to drop the U in the Roosevelt Hotel. Scrubbed it out on his union form with a front desk pen. The manager of the hotel saw it happen. James Arness became James Arness in this way. The Farmer's Daughter contained just 4 of his lines. He repeatedly made a mess of them. Loretta Young, the movie star, saved him from being dismissed by the director. The movie was released. Then James thought it was over. However, at his $14 per week boarding place, a letter appeared. Emma Tilson, a 72-year-old Kansas woman, was the source. "You make me think of my late husband," she wrote. "He was a decent guy." "I think so, too." She told him to get a good supper and gave him $5. He kept that letter in his wallet for 42 years. "I was posing as an actress prior to that letter," James later stated. "That's when I became one." For years later, in 1951, James wore a voluminous outfit, applied makeup, and remained silent. In The Thing from Another World, he played the role of the alien. Despite what some people said, he didn't detest the part. In 2005, he corrected the information. For me, it was an excellent respite. I gained additional jobs because of the attention that movie received. That no one could see his face didn't bother him. It was important that he was noticed. His height of 6 feet 7 inches both benefited and hindered him. His height caused him to be teased as a child. His height prevented him from joining the Navy Air Program in the Army. But he was employed by officials to measure the depth of the water in the Anchio mud. The others may follow if James was able to go past it. However, he frequently played a supporting role or a villain in Hollywood. Big roles were uncommon. However, following The Thing, things started to change. There was a door that went to John Wayne. Arness was signed to the Duke's Company after he appeared in a play. From 1952 until Arness appeared in 4 Wayne movies between 1955 and that year: The Sea Chase, Island in the Sky, Hondo, and Big Jim McLean. Wayne even convinced producers to cast Arness as the lead of a new TV show by recording the opening. It was called Gunsmoke. One of the most well-known television programs ever would be created. Everything changed because to Wayne's mentoring. Arness was already establishing his Western reputation prior to Gunsmoke. As Deputy Sheriff Bud Titus, he made an appearance on The Lone Ranger in 1950. The lawman persona that Arness would eventually refine was first shown to TV viewers in that position. In contrast to many early children's westerns, Arness tended toward somber adult drama. Gunsmoke fit him so perfectly because of this. This was no ordinary shoot-'em-up. It was rich. It took James Arness some time to become a household name. It took rejection, combat wounds, and inexpensive hotel rooms. Much more failure than the majority would experience. Nevertheless, he made every setback into a learning experience. A radio gig evolved from a hospital voice. It became a stand-in job, riding a livestock truck. An unsuccessful scene resulted to a contract for acting. A $5 fan letter became a project that would last a lifetime. The 1950s did not see James Arness as a star. He was tall, very tall at 6 feet 7 inches, but still trying to find his place in Hollywood. Then came Gunsmoke. The role of Marshal Matt Dillon would define his life, but Arness didn't jump into it with confidence. In fact, he tried to back out. There's a rumor that John Wayne was first offered the part. That's not true. Wayne was already a huge movie star. TV wasn't on his radar. But when Arness hesitated about doing a TV show, he turned to Wayne for advice. Arness hoped Wayne would help him get out of the deal, but Wayne did the opposite. He told Arness to stick with it. And then went a step further. Wayne recorded a personal video to introduce the Gunsmoke pilot on September 10, 1955. He called the show honest and adult and told viewers that Arness was going to be a star. That clip helped Gunsmoke get instant attention and it gave Arness the push he needed to stay. But behind the scenes, Arness was still unsure. Right before filming started, he got cold feet. He had signed a contract, done the fittings, but now he was ready to walk away. CBS programming executive William Dozier got involved. He called Arness directly and said, "Don't know me, but you're about to do something very unprofessional." That line hit hard. Arness knew his reputation was at stake. He agreed to meet Dozier at his home. After a long talk, he made up his mind. He'd honor the contract. And with that choice, a television legend was born. When Gunsmoke aired, it didn't look like the other westerns on TV. It wasn't made for kids. It was gritty, slow, and full of gray areas. The violence wasn't cartoonish. The characters weren't perfect. The town of Dodge City in 1873 felt real. And Arness, towering and quiet, was a new kind of TV hero. Viewers noticed. The show climbed in ratings fast. By the end of its first season, Arness went from background actor to national name. Gunsmoke kept growing. It ran for 20 seasons and 635 episodes, longer than any dramatic series at the time. Arness would return as Matt Dillon again and again, even in the 1980s and 1990s. As the show rose, critics took notice too. Arness was nominated for an Emmy 3 years in a row, 1957, 1958, and 1959. He didn't win, but it didn't matter. He'd gone from playing monsters in movies, like the alien and the thing from another world, to leading one of the most respected shows on television. Viewers ranked him among the most beloved actors on TV. And the way he played Dylan, with toughness, fairness, and quiet pain, set a template for TV lawmen that's still used today. But the set wasn't always calm. Milburn Stone, who played Doc Adams, couldn't stand Arness in the early years. From 1955 to 1958, thought Arness was lazy, careless, and completely wrong for the job. He hated that Arness would show up late or joke around while others were working. It drove Stone mad. He later said, "I felt he didn't belong in the business at all." Then came the breaking point. In 1958, Stone exploded. Arness was late again. And Stone let him have it in front of the entire cast and crew. "I've read my contract," he shouted, "and there's nothing in it that says I have to put diapers on you or wait for you. And if you ever show up late again, you'll have two things to explain, not only where you were, but where I went." The room went silent. Everyone froze. It could have ended the show right there. But Arness didn't get angry. He didn't yell back. Instead, he looked Stone in the eyes and said, "Milburn, you're absolutely right." That one sentence changed everything. Was stunned. Arness had taken the blow and admitted his fault. From that day on, they got along. Stone later said Arness became one of his closest friends, calling him a great, big, wonderful, cuddly bear. Few people knew what Arness was really going through. In World War II, at just 20 years old, he was wounded badly during the Battle of Anzio in 1944. He was shot in the leg by a machine gun. Because of his height, he was the first soldier off the landing boat sent to check the water depth. He was waist deep when he was hit. He spent almost a year in the hospital and the injury never fully healed. He lived in pain for the rest of his life. Filming Gunsmoke was brutal on him. Riding horses and walking on rough terrain made his leg ache, but he never complained. His limp wasn't acting. It was real. Viewers thought it added to his tough image. They didn't know it was from war. Arness earned a Bronze Star, a Purple Heart, and other honors for his service. He once said those medals meant more to him than any award from Hollywood. As time passed, Arness became known for generosity on set. Unlike most stars, he didn't hog the spotlight. He told writers to give the heavy stories to other cast members. He only did 4 or 5 major episodes per year. The rest of the time, he said, "I don't press it too much." That decision helped the show last. It gave others a chance to shine. Guest star Earl Holliman remembered it clearly. Jim would show up at the start, right off, and not come back until the end. And then, bang, he'd take down the bad guy. In 1948, he married Virginia Chapman. She had a son from a previous marriage, Little Craig, born in 1946. James adopted him as his own. Together, they had 2 more children, Jenny Lee in 1950 and Rolf in 1952. While James was building his career in Hollywood, Virginia tried her luck in acting too. She even appeared in a couple of episodes of Gunsmoke playing a gypsy. Their son Craig became a successful photographer for National Geographic. Rolf became a surfing legend, winning the World Championship in 1970. But the happy family picture didn't last. By 1958, the marriage started falling apart. They separated but didn't divorce for another 5 years. In 1963, James finally filed for divorce, and what followed shocked everyone. The court gave him full custody of all 3 children. That was rare in the 1960s. James said Virginia was cold, distant, and unstable. A former co-worker backed him up, saying her behavior had worsened. But the most disturbing claim came when James said Virginia let 12-year-old Jenny drink alcohol. Jenny ended up in the hospital. That incident likely sealed the judge's decision. 12 years later, in 1975, tragedy hit hard. Jenny Lee died from a drug overdose just days before turning 25. It was ruled a suicide. She had acted a little, appeared in Gunsmoke, and had dated musician Gregg Allman. But behind the scenes, she was struggling. Friends said she had battled depression for a long time, losing her crush James. Then, in 1977, just 2 years later, Virginia Chapman was found dead. Another overdose, another tragedy. She was only 56. Her death mirrored her daughter's. Virginia had tried to take her own life twice before, back in 1959 and 1960, during her fights with James. After the divorce, her acting career faded. She ran a small motel and wrote about how lonely and empty the Hollywood life had made her feel. After Virginia, James moved on, but love didn't come easy. In 1965, he met actress Thordis Brandt. They had a rocky relationship. He even proposed in 1970, but wanted her to quit acting. It didn't last. She left in 1972 and found peace in the Baha'i faith. Then came Janet Surtees. She wasn't a celebrity, just a store worker. And a single mom. Her son liked Gunsmoke, so she agreed to meet James. They clicked. In 1978, they got married. This time, it lasted. They stayed together for 33 years until James died in 2011. When Gunsmoke ended in 1975, James didn't slow down. He jumped right into a new project, How the West Was Won. The pilot aired in 1976, and it became a series by 1978. He played Zebulon Makahan, a rugged mountain man helping his family move west during the Civil War. The show didn't make big waves in America, but in Europe, it was a hit. Fans loved it, and the show developed a strong cult following that lasted for years. In 1981, James took a surprising turn. No cowboy hat, no horse. He starred in McLean's Law, a police drama where he played a retired detective returning to the force. He was 58 and wanted to break away from westerns. The show had grit and more violence than usual for the time, but it only lasted 16 episodes. After that, James returned to what he knew best. Starting in 1987, he brought back Marshal Matt Dillon for 5 Gunsmoke TV movies. The first was Return to Dodge. It pulled in great ratings and reminded everyone why they loved Dillon. The next 4 films came in the 90s. In one, Dillon chased an Apache who kidnapped his daughter. In another, he got caught in a real historical range war. One story had him on the run, wrongly accused. And in the last one, a 71-year-old Dillon helped a boy seek justice for his mother's murder. The movies were well received, with ratings around 7.1 out of 10. The legend still had power, but there was more to James Arness than acting. In 1968, he quietly gave away his 1,400-acre ranch in Simi Valley. It was worth about $2 million back then, over $16 million today. He gave it to a Jewish youth camp. He wasn't Jewish, but he had seen their work and admired it. The donation came with almost no publicity. He just wanted to help. That wasn't all. He also donated his 60-foot racing catamaran, Sea Smoke, to the Sea Scouts. It was a winning boat. Built in 1966 and had won a major race in 1968. Arness had built his life around the outdoors and wanted others to enjoy it too. Later, he supported causes like the United States Marshals Service and United Cerebral Palsy. James Arness had already become a legend long before his final years, but from 2000 to 2011, the world truly began to appreciate just how much he had given to American television. On February 8, 1960, he got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. That little spot at 1751 Vine Street became a permanent reminder of a giant in TV history. In 1981, the Western Performers Hall of Fame honored him for his unforgettable role as Marshal Matt Dillon. His name sat comfortably beside the greatest in Western cinema. In 1989, People magazine named him number 6 on their list of the top 25 TV stars of all time. That wasn't a small thing. It showed how deeply he had touched American culture. TV Guide went even further in 1996, placing him at number 20 in their list of the 50 greatest TV stars ever. But even with all that, Arness never won an Emmy. Despite being nominated 3 times in a row from 1957 to 1959. Still, the respect never stopped coming. He won the Golden Boot Award in 1969, the Western Heritage Wrangler Award in 1971, and was named Man of the Year by the International Broadcasting Award in 1973. In 1987, Tucson, Arizona even made him an honorary citizen. But what truly made him stand apart wasn't just his fame. It was the fact that real-life lawmen respected him. In 1972, Arness was made an honorary United States Marshal. That was rare. Then, in 1986, he was given badge number 2 from the United States Marshal Service. The only person to receive one before him was President Ronald Reagan. In 1988, he narrated a film called America's Star, which was shown to new United States Marshals to teach them about the history of the agency, even in old age. He stayed proud of that badge. When a retired United States Marshal visited him later in life, Arness still took pictures with it, smiling through the pain of old war wounds. In 1987, he also helped organize a massive United States Marshals Posse event at Anaheim Stadium. Then came a moment that touched him more than any award ever had. On June 20, 2005, he was honored at Los Angeles City Hall. He was 82. The mayor, city council, and city attorney all came together to celebrate him. They praised him for living in LA for 60 years and for giving the world 2 decades of Marshall Dillon on Gunsmoke, the longest-running drama series in TV history. They even created a custom badge just for that day. Arness called it the most wonderful day of his life. He had the resolution framed and hung it in his home. That same ceremony honored his bravery in World War II. In 1944, he had been shot badly at Anzio by German machine guns. The injuries haunted him for life, but never stopped him. His spirit never broke. Then, quietly and peacefully, James Arness passed away in his sleep on June 3, 2011. He was 88. He died in his Brentwood home in Los Angeles just 15 months after his brother, Peter Graves, the star of Mission Impossible, passed away too. They had been best friends. The loss of his brother weighed heavily on Arness. But in the end, Arness left the world with grace. He had written a letter in advance to be posted on his website after his death. In it, he thanked his fans for being with him all those years. For Gunsmoke, for The Thing, for How the West Was Won, and for all the fun he'd had making those shows. He called it a wonderful life. He left behind his wife, Janet, who he had married in 1978, and his son Rolf, who had once been a world surfing champion back in 1970. They held a private memorial to honor a man who didn't just play a hero on screen, he became one in real life. And through it all, James Arness remained one of the most loved and respected figures television has ever known.